The seventh and final cycle began with the release of a creature that had no official name in the Dominion's records. The Vistanews records that had no official name in the Dominion's records. That had no official name in the Dominion's records. The Arena Masters simply called it the Finisher. It was the largest predator in the Keth Valley arsenal. A monster engineered over generations to be the perfect killing machine. It had 6 legs that could propel it faster than any tribute could run it, had armored scales that could deflect any weapon the tributes might have fashioned it, had jaws that could crush stone and claws that could tear through metal in all the cycles that had come before. The Finisher had never failed to eliminate every tribute that remained. When the creature emerged from its holding chamber, the ground shook with its footsteps. Yuna's group felt those vibrations long before they saw the monster. And Mirith's plates turned a shade of terror that she had not displayed since the first day in the arena. "It is coming," Mirith whispered. "Something huge. Something wrong." Yuna gathered her group and led them to the position they had prepared over the past 6 cycles. They had mapped the arena extensively. They knew its terrain better than anyone had ever known it before, and they had found a place where even a creature the size of the Finisher might be stopped. It was a narrow canyon that cut through the heart of the arena, with walls too steep to climb and a river running through its center. The canyon had only one entrance wide enough for a large predator, and that entrance opened onto a steep slope covered in loose rocks. When the Finisher appeared at the canyon entrance, Yuna felt her heart stop for a moment. The creature was larger than anything she had imagined, filled the entrance completely, its eyes glowing with predatory hunger, its massive jaws opening to reveal teeth the size of her forearm. "Now," she shouted. The tribute sprang into action. Dorvan threw himself against a boulder that had been carefully loosened over the past 3 days, sending it tumbling down the slope toward the Finisher. Kess darted across the creature's path, drawing its attention while the others moved into position. Tall surfaced from the river, with armfuls of the slippery plants that grew on its bed, throwing them onto the rocks beneath the Finisher's feet. The creature roared and charged forward, but the loose rocks shifted under its weight, and the slippery plants made the ground treacherous. It stumbled, and as it tried to regain its balance, more rocks came tumbling down from above. Where Ven had been waiting to trigger a second landslide, the Finisher fell. It crashed onto its side with a sound like thunder, its legs scrabbling for purchase on the treacherous ground. And then Yuna did something that she had been planning since the first moment she entered the arena. She walked toward the fallen creature. "Yuna." "No," Mirith cried out, but Yuna did not stop. She walked until she was standing directly in front of the Finisher's massive head, close enough that she could see her own reflection in its enormous eyes. The creature was not dead, was not even seriously injured. It was simply confused. Its predator instincts scrambled by prey that had fought back instead of fleeing. Yuna looked into those eyes and saw something she had suspected from the beginning: fear. The Finisher was afraid not of her exactly, but of what she represented. It had been engineered to kill prey that ran and hid and cowered. It had no response for prey that stood its ground. "You were made to kill us," Yuna said softly, knowing that her words were being broadcast across the entire Dominion. "But we were made to survive, and we are better at surviving than you are at killing." The Finisher did not attack. It lay there, breathing heavily, watching this small human with confusion in its engineered eyes, and then, slowly, it lowered its head to the ground in what might have been submission in the Dominion High Council chambers. The members watched in stunned silence as the most dangerous predator in their arsenal was defeated by a group of children without a single casualty. High Keeper Sethel stood among them, her earlier warnings now vindicated in the most dramatic possible way. "This changes everything," the eldest council member said finally. "Yes," Sethel agreed. "It does." The council debated for hours, But in the end, there was only one choice that would not lead to immediate rebellion across their conquered worlds. The tributes were to be released. The arena of proving was to be closed permanently. The official announcement would frame this as an act of Dominion mercy, a recognition that the tributes had proven themselves worthy of life, but everyone knew the truth. The HFY had not ended the arena out of mercy, they had ended it out of fear. The gates of the arena opened on the morning of the 8th day, and the tributes walked out into sunlight that felt different from the artificial light they had endured for a week. Yuna walked at the center of her group, surrounded by the friends she had made, the allies she had forged, the survivors who had learned that cooperation was stronger than any weapon they were met by. HFY officials who regarded them with expressions that mixed respect and wariness. Commander Thrax was notably absent, but Yuna did not care about Thrax or the officials or anything except the fact that they had survived. They had all survived, and they had done it together. Myers' plates were cycling through every color of joy and relief and hope. Dorvan was crying, his stone-like face wet with tears he had held back for an entire week. Kes was running in circles, burning off energy she had been saving for the survival she had never truly believed in. They were alive, they were free, and they were going home. As Yuna walked toward the transport that would take her back to New Bizen, she passed a viewing screen that was broadcasting coverage of the arena's closure. She saw her own face looking back at her, accompanied by commentary in the HFY language. She could not understand the words, but she understood the images that followed. Conquered worlds were displaying recordings of the arena. Parents who had lost children were holding vigils where they played. Footage of Yuna's group standing together against predators that should have killed them. Young people from a dozen different species were gathering in public spaces, watching the moment when a human girl had faced down a HFY commander and made him retreat. Something was spreading across the Dominion, something that had started with a 12-year-old girl who had volunteered to save her brother. Yuna stopped walking and looked at the screen for a long moment. Then she felt a hand on her shoulder and turned to find Mirith standing beside her, those beautiful plates glowing with soft purple light. What happens now? Mirith asked. Yuna thought about her answer carefully. Now, we go home, she said. We tell everyone what we learned here. We teach them what we taught each other, that we are stronger together than we are alone. That fear only wins when we let it separate us. She looked back at the screen, where the footage had changed to show uprisings beginning on multiple conquered worlds. And then, she added quietly, the Dominion learns what it really means to be afraid. Mirith made a sound that might have been a laugh. They thought the arena would break us. They thought it would prove that conquered species could never fight back. Instead, Yuna said, they gave us a stage to show the entire galaxy what we could do together. She smiled then, the same smile she had worn when she first walked out of the arena gates. It was not a smile of triumph or cruelty or revenge. It was a smile of hope, the same hope she had carried into the arena when everyone thought she would die, the same hope she had shared with every tribute who had learned to stand beside her, the same hope that was now spreading across the Dominion like fire. Through dry grass the HFY had built their arena to kill children and break the spirits of conquered worlds. Instead, they had created a legend that would inspire rebellion for generations to come, and at the center of that legend was a human girl who had walked into death and walked out smiling, because she knew that the arena was never just about survival. It was about showing the galaxy that even the weakest among them could stand together and fight back, and that lesson, once learned, could never be unlearned. 5 cycles had passed, and the impossible had become undeniable. Every tribute in Yuna's group had survived. Not only had they survived, but they had begun to do something that no tribute had ever done in the 300-year history of the arena. Of proving, they had started hunting their hunters, began with the traps. Simple at first, designed only to slow the predators and give the group warning. But as Yuna studied each creature that was released into the arena, she began to understand their weaknesses and their patterns. She shared this knowledge with her group, and together, they developed strategies that turned the arena's carefully engineered ecosystem against itself. The pack hunters fell into pit traps covered with branches. The ambush predators found themselves ambushed by coordinated groups of tributes who had learned their hiding spots. The night stalkers were blinded by reflective surfaces that Yuna had taught the group to create from certain plants that grew near the streams. Each victory made the group stronger. Each victory made them believe that survival was possible, and each victory made the HFY audience increasingly uncomfortable. This was not how the arena was supposed to work, Commander. Thrax had been receiving complaints from the highest levels of HFY society. The arena of proving was sacred entertainment, a tradition that demonstrated the superiority of the Dominion over all other species. It was not supposed to feature conquered children working together to defeat the predators that should have killed them. This human has corrupted the purpose of the arena, one official had argued during an emergency council session. The tributes are supposed to demonstrate the futility of resistance. Instead, they are demonstrating the exact opposite. Thrax had assured the council that he would handle the situation. Personally, now he stood at the gates of the arena, armed with weapons that could kill any creature within, preparing to enter a place where no HFY official had walked during an active tribute. Cycling over a century protocol forbade direct interference in the arena, but Thrax had decided that some protocols needed to be broken for the greater good of the Dominion. He found Yuna's group in a clearing they had turned into a defended camp. They had built shelters from branches and leaves. They had created a water collection system. They had posted sentries at every approach when Thrax emerged from the trees, his massive reptilian body towering over the children who turned to face him. He expected to see terror in their eyes. He expected them to scatter like the prey animals they were supposed to be. Instead, they formed a line in front of him, 8 children from 8 different worlds, standing together as though they were soldiers facing an enemy, and in the center of that line stood the human girl, looking up at him with eyes that held no fear at all. "Commander Thrax," Yuna said, her voice calm and steady, "you are not supposed to be here." Thrax had killed enemies 3 times his size. He had conquered worlds and crushed rebellions and earned his position through centuries of demonstrated superiority. Yet, something about this small human girl made him hesitate. "You have corrupted the sacred tradition of the arena," he said, forcing authority into his voice. "You have turned these tributes against the natural order of things." "The natural order," Yuna replied, her head tilting slightly as though she were considering his words. "You mean the order where children from conquered worlds die for your entertainment. It is the way of the Dominion. It is the way you chose." Yuna corrected him. "And you chose it because you are afraid." Thrax's claws flexed involuntarily. No one had ever accused him of fear. No one would have dared. "You are a child," he said. "You know nothing of the Dominion or its purposes. I know that the Dominion conquers worlds that are weaker than yours." Yuna said, "I know that you take children and force them to die in arenas while your people watch. And I know that you do this because you need to prove to yourselves that you are superior." She took a step toward him, this tiny human girl approaching, a HFY commander who could have torn her apart with a single swipe of his claws. "But if you were truly superior," she continued, "you would not need to kill children to prove it." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the artificial sounds of the arena seemed to fade away, leaving only the confrontation between a representative of the most powerful empire in the known galaxy and a 12-year-old girl from a frontier mining colony Thrax raised his weapon. The other tributes did not scatter. They closed ranks behind Yuna, forming a wall of small bodies between the commander and their leader Myriths. Plates flashed defiant purple Dorvan's rocky fists, clenched Kess's four legs tensed for movement vents. Three eyes fixed on Thrax. Without blinking, none of them fled. None of them begged. They simply stood there, waiting to see what would happen next. And Thrax realized, with a sensation he had never experienced before, that killing Yuna would not end this. It would begin something. These children had been transformed by their time together. They had learned that cooperation was stronger than fear. They had learned that standing together could defeat enemies far more powerful than themselves. If he killed their leader, they would not crumble. They would fight. And every tribute watching from hiding places throughout the arena, every survivor from previous cycles who had been enslaved rather than freed, every conquered species across the Dominion who was watching this broadcast, would see children rise against a Kethvali commander. Thrax lowered his weapon. He took a step backward, and then, for the first time in his long and violent life, Commander Thrax of the Kethvali Dominion retreated from an enemy he could easily have destroyed in observation chambers across 1,000 worlds. Millions of viewers watched a Kethvali commander walk away from a human girl and her group of misfit tributes. Some watched in confusion, some watched in anger. But on the conquered worlds, on the planets that had sent their children to die in the arena, something else began to stir. Something that the Dominion had worked for 3 centuries to prevent. Hope High Keeper Sethel did not wait for the Council to respond to her previous messages. She initiated an emergency communication directly to the Dominion High Council chambers, overriding protocols that existed to prevent exactly this kind of interruption. "You must end the arena immediately," she said, as soon as the connection was established. Council members stared at her with expressions ranging from annoyance to outrage. "The arena is a sacred tradition," one of them said. "It has maintained order in the Dominion for 300 years. And in 300 years, no tribute has ever done what this human girl has done." Sethel replied, "She has not merely survived. She has united tributes from multiple species into a cooperative force. She has demonstrated that our predators can be defeated through teamwork. And she has done all of this while the entire Dominion watched." She paused, letting her words sink in. "Do you understand what this means? It means every conquered species has just learned that resistance is possible. It means every parent who sent a child to die in the arena now knows that their children did not have to die alone. It means the foundation of our control over the conquered worlds has just been shattered by a 12-year-old human girl." The council chamber fell silent finally. The eldest member spoke. "What do you recommend?" Sethel took a breath that felt like it might be her last as a free Kethvali citizen. "Release the tributes," she said. "End the arena tradition, and pray that we have not waited too long down in the arena." Yuna watched Thrax disappear into the trees and felt her legs begin to shake with the fear she had been holding back through sheer force of Wilmerith caught her before she could fall. Those delicate insectoid limbs surprisingly strong. "You scared him," Mirith said with wonder in her voice. "You actually scared a Kethvali commander." Yuna laughed, though tears were streaming down her face. "I scared myself," she admitted. "I thought he was going to kill me. But you did not run." "No," Yuna agreed, wiping her eyes. "I did not run. Because sometimes the only way to survive is to show your enemy that you are more afraid of giving up than you are of dying." The other tributes gathered around her, and for the first time since they had entered this arena, meant to kill them. Yuna allowed herself to believe that they might actually make it out alive. 3 cycles had passed, and not a single member of Yuna's group had died. This was unprecedented in the entire history of the arena of proving the Kethvali. Audience had watched with increasing confusion as these children, these soft and fragile tributes from conquered worlds, continued to survive dangers that had killed thousands. Before them, they worked together, in ways that seemed almost impossible to species that valued individual strength above all else. Highkeeper Sethel had spent 3 sleepless nights studying everything the Dominion's archives contained about humanity. What she found disturbed her more with every passing hour. Humans came from a world where everything seemed designed to kill them. The atmosphere was filled with a corrosive gas they somehow needed to breathe. The planet's surface was covered in liquid water that could drown them, and frozen water that could freeze them, and storms that could destroy their fragile shelters. Predators stalked every corner of their world, and diseases lurked in the very air they breathed. Yet humans had not merely survived these conditions, they had conquered them. They had spread across their entire planet and then reached beyond it into the stars. And the way they had done this, Sethel realized with growing unease, was exactly what she was witnessing in the arena. They worked together. They formed groups and shared knowledge and protected each other from threats that would have destroyed any individual down in the arena. Yuna was teaching her group how to set simple traps. She had learned these techniques from her father, who had grown up on Earth before emigrating to the colonies, and who had told her stories of how their ancestors had survived in a world that wanted them dead. The traps were not designed to kill the predators. They were designed to warn the group when danger approached and to slow the creatures down enough for the tributes to retreat to prepared positions. Mirth had become invaluable in this effort. Her ability to sense vibrations through the ground meant she could detect approaching predators long before anyone else. She had also grown more confident over the past 3 cycles, her plates now displaying colors that spoke of hope rather than despair. Yuna, Mirith said as they worked together to set a simple snare. Why do you think the Kethvali do this? Do what? The arena? Mirith clarified. Why? Do they make children fight and die for their entertainment? Yuna considered the question as she tied a knot with practiced hands. I think they are afraid, she said. Fanala Mirith's plates flashed with confusion. Afraid of what? Of us. Yuna replied, of all of us. All the species they have conquered. The arena is not just entertainment. It is a reminder to every conquered world the resistance is useless. It breaks spirits before they can rise. She finished the knot and looked at Mirith with eyes that seemed older than her 12 years. But fear is a weakness, Yuna continued, and we can use their fear against them. The 3rd cycle's predator was released at midday. A massive creature called a stalker that hunted through ambush rather than pursued it, was patient and silent and deadly, capable of waiting for hours before striking with devastating speed when the stalker entered the arena. The Kethvali audience leaned forward with anticipation. This creature had never failed to make it kill the tributes. Who had survived thus far would surely fall to its silent attack. But Yuna had anticipated this. She had studied the creatures from previous cycles and had noticed that they all shared one thing in common. They targeted isolated prey. The pack hunters attacked those who ran alone. The ambush predators waited for moments when tributes separated from their groups. Every instinct these creatures possessed was designed to exploit fear and isolation. So Yuna made sure her group was never isolated. They moved together in a formation she had developed, with Ven's night vision eyes scanning the shadows and Mirith's vibration sense monitoring the ground, and Kess's quick legs ready to alert the group if danger approached from unexpected angles. When the stalker finally struck, it chose a moment when Mirith had wandered slightly away from the main group to refill water containers. The creature lunged from the darkness of an overhanging rock. Its claws extended toward the small Velani tribute, who represented easy prey. But Yuna had seen the shadow move. She had been watching for exactly this kind of attack. And she did something that made every HFY watching freeze in disbelief. She ran toward the danger, not away from it, toward Una, threw herself between Mirith and the stalker, placing her small human body directly in the path of a predator that outweighed her by a factor of 10. The stalker's attack faltered its ambush instincts, honed over generations of engineered breeding, had no response for prey that charged into its strike. Rather than fleeing from a tuna, stood her ground and stared directly into the creature's eyes, refusing to break contact, refusing to show the fear that every cell in her body was screaming at her to feel. "Go," she said calmly. Not to Mirith, but to the stalker itself. Find easier prey. The standoff lasted for seconds that felt like hours. Then the stalker did something it had never done in all its years of arena hunting. It backed away in the observation chamber. A young HFY child tugged at their parent's arm and asked a question that echoed through the suddenly silent room. Why isn't she afraid? The parent had no answer, neither did High Keeper Sethel, who watched the human girl help the trembling Mirith back to the safety of the group, as though she had not just faced death itself. Later that night, as the artificial stars glowed above the arena, Sethel finally found what she had been searching for in the archives. She found records of something humans called persistence hunting. She found accounts of a species that had chased prey across entire continents, not through speed but through endurance, following their targets for days until the creatures simply collapsed from exhaustion. She found histories of wars where humans had fought against overwhelming odds and refused to surrender, not because victory was possible, but because surrender was simply not something their psychology allowed them to consider. And she found biological data showing that humans possessed something called an adrenal response, a chemical reaction in their bodies that could temporarily suppress fear and pain and exhaustion when survival demanded it. The HFY had designed their arena to break prey species. They had filled it with predators that exploited fear and isolation and the natural instinct to flee from danger. But humans, Sethel realized with a chill that ran through her ancient bones, were not truly a prey species. They were predators, themselves predators who had evolved to hunt and fight and survive on one of the most hostile worlds in the known galaxy. Predators who had learned that cooperation was the ultimate survival strategy. The HFY had not placed prey among their tributes. They had placed a predator, and that predator was now teaching every other species in the arena how to become predators. To stall reached for her communication device with hands that trembled slightly. For the first time in decades, she needed to contact the Dominion High Council. She needed to warn them about what was happening in their sacred arena. But even as she composed her message, she knew that it might already be too late. Down in the arena, surrounded by tributes who looked at her as though she were something more than a scared human girl, Una smiled at Mirith and told her that tomorrow they would learn how to build better traps. They would learn how to predict the predator's movements. They would learn how to turn this arena that was meant to kill them into something else entirely. What are we turning it into? Mirith asked, her plates now glowing with soft purple light. Una looked at the stars above them, artificial though they were, and thought about her brother back on New Bizen, waiting for her to come home. A lesson, she said quietly, for everyone watching. We are going to teach the entire galaxy that children from conquered worlds can stand together and fight back. And in observation chambers across 1,000 HFY worlds, millions of viewers watched a human girl smile in the darkness of an arena that had never failed to break every tribute who entered it. The warships came to New Bizen on a morning that had started like any other. Una Park was helping her mother hang laundry outside their small home near the mining settlement when the shadows fell across the sky. and she looked up to see 3 massive vessels blocking the sun itself. She was 12 years old and had lived on this frontier colony her entire life, far from Earth and far from the protection of any major human fleet. Her father worked in the mines beneath the red soil, and her mother grew vegetables in their small garden. And her little brother Jinho played with rocks he pretended were starships. None of them had ever seen HFY warships before, but everyone on the colony knew what they meant. The Dominion had come to collect within hours. Soldiers marched through the settlement streets, their reptilian bodies towering over the human colonists, their scaled skin gleaming like dark armor under the alien sun. Commander Thrax led them personally, his yellow eyes scanning the gathered humans with what could only be described as bored contempt. He had done this many times before on many worlds, and these soft creatures were no different from any other conquered species. By the laws of the Dominion of HFY, he announced through a translation device strapped to his throat, "This colony exists under our protection and must therefore pay tribute." Yuna stood with her family in the crowd, holding Jinho's hand tightly as the commander continued, speaking. "One juvenile of your species will be selected to represent your world in the arena of proving, where they will demonstrate the worth of humanity to the Dominion." Murmurs of fear rippled through the colonists. They had heard stories about the arena. Whispered tales passed between traders and refugees from other conquered worlds. No child had ever returned from it. The selection process was simple and cruel. HFY soldiers walked through the crowd, scanning the children with devices that measured health and age. They wanted tributes between 10 and 14 years old, strong enough to provide entertainment, but young enough to pose no real threat. When a soldier stopped in front of Jinho, Yuna felt her heart freeze in her chest. Her brother was only 8, but he was tall for his age, and the device beeped with apparent approval. "This one," the soldier said. "No," Yuna said, stepping forward before her parents could move. Before anyone could stop her, the soldier turned his massive head toward her, and she forced herself not to look away from those cold reptilian eyes. "Take me instead," she said, keeping her voice steady, even though everything inside her was screaming to run and hide. "I am older and stronger, and will provide better entertainment for your arena." Thrax himself walked over to examine this small human, who dared to speak directly to his soldiers. He studied her with mild curiosity, noting her thin frame and her dark hair, and her eyes that held his gaze without flinching. Most species broke down at this point, weeping and begging. This child simply stood there, waiting. "You volunteer yourself in place of the younger one?" Thrax asked, though it was not really a question. "Yes." He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Interesting," he said, then turned to his soldiers and gestured for them to take her. Yuna had just enough time to hug her mother and father, to whisper to Jinho that she would come back for him, before the soldiers led her away toward the transport shuttle. She did not cry. She had decided in that moment that she would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. The journey to the arena world took 3 standard days, and Yuna spent that time observing everything around her. The transport ship held tributes from 7 other conquered species, each one representing a different world that had fallen under HFY control, most of them huddled in corners of the holding cell, their strange bodies trembling with fear that needed no translation. One tribute caught Yuna's attention more than the others. She was small and delicate, with a body that resembled an insect from Earth, covered in iridescent plates that shifted color with her emotions. Right now those plates were deep, mournful blue. Yuna learned her name was Mirith, and she came from a world called Velon. And she had been selected because her family owed debts they could not pay. The Velani were not fighters. They were artists and musicians and poets. And Mirith had never even seen violence before the HFY came to her world. "We will die in the arena," Mirith said. her voice a soft chime that the translation implant rendered into words. Yuna could understand. Everyone dies in the arena. Yuna sat down next to her and offered half of her food ration, which Mirith accepted with trembling limbs. Tell me about the arena, Yuna said. Tell me everything you know over the next 2 days. Mirith shared what little knowledge she had gathered from other Vellani who had lost children to the tribute system. The Arena of Proving was an artificial ecosystem spanning several hundred square kilometers, filled with predator beasts engineered for maximum lethality. Tributes were released into this environment and given 7 cycles to survive each cycle. New predators were introduced, each more dangerous than the last. There were no weapons provided, no shelter given, no mercy offered. The Kethvali watched everything through countless observation devices, broadcasting the arena across their empire as entertainment. Millions of them gathered to watch children from conquered species run and hide, and eventually fall to the beast that hunted them. Survival was technically possible if a tribute lasted all 7 cycles. They earned what the Kethvali called mercy, which meant a life of slavery rather than death. But in the 300 years since the arena's creation, fewer than a dozen tributes had survived, and all of them had done so alone, hiding and running until the final cycle ended. No one had ever fought back. No one had ever organized resistance. The arena was designed to ensure the tributes remained isolated and terrified, easy prey for the predators that stalked them. Yuna listened to all of this and asked questions and filed away every piece of information in her memory. She noticed that Mirith's color plates shifted toward pale green when she talked about her homeworld, and toward deep blue when she talked about the arena, and toward soft purple when Yuna made her laugh with a silly face. The other tributes began to notice the human girl too. She moved among them during meal times, learning their names and their abilities and their fears. There was Dorvan, a young male from a heavy gravity world, whose body was built like solid rock but whose eyes held gentle sadness. There was Kess, quick and nervous with 4 legs that could carry her faster than any predator. There were others too, each unique, each terrified, each convinced they were going to die. Yuna did not tell them they would survive. She was not a liar, but she sat with them and talked with them and learned everything she could about what made each of them special. When the transport ship finally descended toward the arena world, all the tributes gathered at the viewport to see their destination. The Colosseum was visible from orbit, a massive structure that could have held entire cities within its walls. Yuna stared at it while Mirith trembled beside her. Those beautiful plates now cycling through every shade of fear. What lives in there? Yuna asked quietly. What is it that kills everyone? Mirith's answer came as barely a whisper. Everything, she said. Everything in there is designed to kill us. Yuna nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving the arena that had swallowed thousands of children from hundreds of species across 3 centuries of Kethvali entertainment. Then she did something that made Mirith's plates flash with confusion. She smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible, but it was real, and somewhere deep inside her mind, where the fear could not reach, Yuna Park began to plan. The arena gates opened with a sound like thunder, and the tributes were pushed forward into the manufactured wilderness that would become either their prison or their grave. Yuna walked beside Mirith, her eyes scanning every detail of the landscape before them. There were forests of twisted purple trees and rocky outcroppings that rose like broken teeth from the ground, and streams of dark water that wound through valleys choked with strange vegetation. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like a garden designed by someone who had only ever known cruelty. A massive holographic display flickered to life above them, and Commander Thrax's face appeared against the alien sky. Welcome to the Arena of Proving. His voice boomed across the landscape. "You will remain here for 7 cycles. And during each cycle, predators will be released to hunt you. There are no weapons here. No shelters provided. No assistance given. Survive. And you earn the mercy of the Dominion. Die. And you prove that your species was never worthy of existence." The display vanished. And for a long moment, the tributes stood frozen in place, staring at the vast arena that surrounded them on all sides. Then, as if on cue, they scatter-red Marith started to run toward the nearest cluster of trees. Following the instinct that had kept her species alive for millions of years, but Una caught her arm and held her back. "Wait." Una said Myrith's plate cycled through shades of fear and confusion. "We have to hide," she said. "The predators will come soon. The predators are not here yet." Una replied calmly, "And hiding alone is how everyone before us has died." She looked around at the other tributes who were already disappearing into the landscape, each one seeking their own solitary refuge. "I need you to help me bring them back." It took time and patience and more courage than Mirith knew she possessed. But together they managed to gather most of the tributes before the first cycle began. Some refused to listen and vanished into the wilderness alone. But 8 of them stood in a small clearing with Una, their different bodies and different fears united by something they had never experienced. Before Una looked at each of them in turn, learning their shapes and sizes and capabilities. There was Darvan with his stone-like body and gentle heart. There was Kess with her 4 quick legs and sharp hearing. There was Tall, a tribute from an amphibious species who could breathe underwater. There was Ven, whose 3 eyes could see in complete darkness, and there were others, each with something unique to offer. "The Kethvali expect us to run and hide and die alone," Una said, keeping her voice low but steady. "They have built this arena to break us apart because they know that separated, we are weak, but together we are something they have never seen before." She began to organize them, assigning roles based on what each tribute could do best. Myrith could sense vibrations through the ground, detecting movement from great distances. Ven could watch for danger in the darkness. Kess could scout ahead and report back quickly. Dorvan could hold positions that others could not. Tall could find safe passages through water. "We stay together," Una told them. "We watch for each other. We survive as a group or not at all." High above the arena, in the observation chambers reserved for the most important Kethvali officials, High Keeper Sello watched the human girl with growing interest. Though was ancient by her species standards, having overseen the arena of proving for more than 60 cycles of tribute selection. She had seen thousands of children enter these dates and had watched most of them die in ways that entertained her people, but she had never seen a tribute do what this human was doing. "Curious," she murmured, adjusting the viewing screen to focus on the small gathering of children. The other officials around her were not paying attention, distracted by refreshments and social conversations. The entertainment had not yet begun in their minds, but Sethel could not look away from that little human girl who stood among aliens twice her size and spoke to them as though she were their leader. The first predator was released when the sun reached its highest point in the artificial sky. It was a pack-hunting creature called a shrike, engineered with 6 legs and a mouth full of serrated teeth and an instinct to chase anything that ran from it. The shrikes were released every first cycle because they were effective at creating fear. A terrified tribute who survived the first day would be too exhausted and traumatized to resist what came later, when the howls of the shrike pack echoed across the arena. Every tribute in Una's group wanted to run. Una did not let them. "Listen to me," she said, as the howls grew closer. "These creatures hunt things that flee. If we run, they will chase us, and they are faster than all of us. But if we stand together in a place where they cannot surround us, we have a chance. She had spotted the terrain during her earlier observation. A narrow gap between two rocky outcroppings that opened into a small cave. Entrance was barely wide enough for two shrikes to enter at once. Dorvan, you stand at the front, Una directed. You are the strongest. Mirith, tell us when they are close. Everyone else gather stones and branches, anything we can use to make noise and look bigger than we are. They scrambled to follow her instructions, and Una helped them, showing them how to hold the makeshift weapons, how to stand tall despite their terror. Mirth suddenly cried out that the shrikes were coming, and moments later the pack burst through the trees. There were 5 of them, their dark bodies moving with terrifying speed and grace. But when they reached the narrow gap and saw the tributes standing together, brandishing their crude weapons and shouting in their different languages, the lead shrike hesitated. Predators that hunt fleeing prey are not prepared for prey that does not flee. Una stepped forward and swung her branch at the nearest shrike, striking its snout with all her strength. The creature yelped and pulled back, and the other shrikes hesitated further, confused by behavior they had never encountered before. The standoff lasted for an eternity, or perhaps only a few minutes. Then the pack leader made a decision that its engineered instincts could not override it, turned and led its pack away in search of easier prey in the observation chamber. Sethel watched the shrikes retreat from a group of children, and she felt something cold settle in her chest. Bring me the records on the human species, she said to her assistant. The records were thin, barely more than a footnote in the Dominion's vast archives. Humanity had only been conquered recently, a small species on the edge of known space, unremarkable in every way that the Kethvali valued. But there was one notation at the bottom of the file that made Sethel pause. Species originated from a Class 12 death world. She read aloud. Recommend caution. She had dismissed this as a clerical error when the human tribute was first selected. Class 12 death worlds were rare, planets so hostile that only the most adaptable and dangerous species could evolve there. Surely this small, soft creature could not have come from such a place. But as she watched the human girl organize the other tributes, saw the way she had turned a scattered group of terrified children into something that functioned like a single organism, Sethel began to wonder if perhaps the clerical notation was not an error after all. Down in the arena, as the first sun set and the artificial night began, Una gathered her group in a small cave and showed them how to take turns keeping watch. Myrith curled beside her, those beautiful plates finally shifting toward calm purple, and whispered a question that all the tributes were thinking. How did you know? She asked. How did you know they would not attack? Una was quiet for a moment, thinking of her home world, of the stories her grandmother had told her about the ancient hunters of Earth, who had faced predators much larger than themselves. On my world, she said softly, my ancestors survived by doing exactly this. They were small and weak compared to the creatures that hunted them, but they learned to stand together. And they learned that predators are not prepared for prey that fights back. Mirith's plates shifted through colors that had no name in any language. Your world sounds frightening, she said. Una smiled in the darkness. It was, she admitted, but it made us strong. And somewhere far above them, Keeper Cello began searching the archives for everything the Dominion knew about the planet called Earth.